Hello, welcome back to Surface Explore Record, where I am taking you through a three-step methodology that I use to work with AI to build an application. Now, I'm coming at this from someone with 40 years experience in software development, software engineering, and I bring those software best practices into this same methodology that I'm using to work with AI. The three steps are surface decisions. That is, we work with the AI to understand what decisions we need to make. Then we explore options for each decision. And then finally, we record those options. And once we record those options, then we can use that to build any kind of specifications or documentations that we need to make. So far, we've worked through, as you see, the idea phase where we did our business requirements and product requirements. We went through the design phase where we looked at what we wanted the app to look like. We went through the technical phase where we looked at the architectural decision records and the technical design document. And finally, the planning phase where we put together an implementation plan. We're now in the build phase. This is our fourth episode in the build phase. And that makes sense that we spend more time in the build phase because our goal in this is to actually build an application. So we should spend more time in the build phase. In this episode, I'm going to show you a little more about working with Claude specifically, although most of the things I'm going to show you will work with other coding assistants such as Antigravity or Codex or whatever you're using. I'm going to show you specifically some things that I do with Claude, how I use the Claude.md file, how I use Claude commands, and then how I use the new Claude agent view to run some things in parallel. So let's go over to VS Code and Claude Code and continue with the build. Okay, welcome back. So here we are in VS Code. I haven't started Claude yet. I wanted to show you a couple of the ways that I use some of the Claude specifications when I'm working with Claude Code. Now, a lot of people like to put a lot of information in their Claude.md file or in some of their commands or maybe even in agent.md files. I like to keep that information sparse and then provide the exact specifications that I need later as I'm working with Claude. Let me give you an example. So if you look at my Claude.md that I created just for this episode, you'll see that all I'm doing is I'm telling Claude where to find different specifications. So now if I say, hey, pull up the implementation plan, Claude knows where to go look for it. Or if I say, look at my architectural decision records, Claude knows where to look for it. Notice I don't tell Claude to actually read these. I just tell Claude where they are. Let me show you another one. I like to use commands. So under your .claude commands, I have a pickup.md. And pickup is a command that I use fairly often when I'm working with Claude Code. I'll start a project and I'll just start the command pickup. And what pickup does here, just notice what I'm telling it, just to review the implementation plan and the implementation status, tell me what's been completed so far and what's next. Often I'll also include some commands here about looking at your get logs so that you know what's been pushed recently, if there are any diffs, if there's anything that's changed, so that Claude can understand what code has already been changed. So this shows you that when I'm working with Claude Code, I like to keep my MD files, my Claude specifications themselves as sparse as possible. And I keep all of my information in separate documents. There's a reason for that, and it's mainly because of my experience in working with software engineering, understanding how these spec documents work. And the other thing to realize is that the more information you put in your Claude.md or your commands or anything like that, it's going to read those each time. So I'm going to close out this and come back when Claude is running, and then we'll continue with our build. Okay, welcome back. Now Claude is running in the terminal in VS Code. Now in the previous episodes, at this point I would have Claude review the implementation plan and the implementation status so that it knows where we are and to give me an update. Now that I've created the pickup, I can just say pickup. And what Claude will do is run that command, which tells it to do the same thing. It's a very quick and easy way to do it. One thing to remember is when you do these commands, as you work through the phases of the software development lifecycle, the SDLC, this command may need to change. For instance, you may have maybe a deployment plan that you're working on, and you don't want to go back to your implementation plan. You want it to look at the deployment plan. So just remember that you'll have to modify those. So now we see that the Claude has told us what's done. We've completed parts A, B, and C. We still have next phase D. D1 specifically. That's part of part D. But I wanted to do something a little bit different because I want to show you how to use Claude's agent view to handle multiple sessions running at the same time. So let's pull up the implementation plan status document, and we'll notice that, okay, I've got the right document. We'll notice that we finished, like I said here, we finished A, B, and C, and we're on D. And then the next thing is E. So let's say that we have decided, I want to try to do some things in parallel here. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Claude to give us some options. What are some options for running the next two parts D and E, in parallel? So Claude is going to go back and look at our implementation plan, and it's going to say, can any of this be done in parallel, or does everything need to be done sequentially? Now, if you go all the way back to the episode where we worked on the implementation plan, I showed you that you could create an implementation plan that has parallel tracks so that you could work on, say, 3 or 4 different things at one time. I didn't do that for this, but still, as you're going through, there are some different ways to do even a sequential plan in parallel, but you have to be careful with it. So let's see what Claude recommends. Option 1, it says pull the anywhere phases forward. So there are several phases that can be run anywhere. Option 2, split D1 and D2 across 2 tracks. And then option 3 says interleave E3 tests and dependencies. Now, I mean, those are all good, but I just want to know, say, is it possible to run parts D and E in parallel? So again, even though Claude is giving us some options, we don't have to go with the options. There could be something that we want to do. So notice Claude says, mostly yes. So there are some things that can be done in parallel. So there are some places where D and E touch each other. And so this is the things that we want to be very careful of. But what I want to do, though, is I do want to start D1 and E1. Those can be run in parallel. So I want to start D1 and E1 in parallel. And I'm going to do this just like I did last time by telling Claude to enter plan mode and run the implementation phase D1 in a new work tree. Now this is important because I want to make sure that Claude uses a work tree so that we can keep the 2 sessions separately. Now normally Claude would do this anyway, but I just want to make sure that it does it. So I'm going to specify use a new work tree, and I'm going to let Claude know we're going to be working on part E in another session. So I'm going to kick that off, and while that's starting, I'm going to use a BG for background mode to put that in the background. And now I can run Claude agents, and I can see here is my part D that's running here. And sometimes like this, you have to kick it off again. And so now it's running, it created the work tree, and it's getting ready to run D1 in this session. So I'll go back to Claude agents with the backspace. And so you can see here's parallelized. This is where it's working on part D. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell it the same thing, but remember this is a new session, so we're going to have it do the pickup again because it hasn't read in this session, it hasn't read the implementation plan. So I'm going to tell it to do the pickup again so that it reads the implementation plan and status and it understands what's coming next, and then I will be ready when it's finished. It's coming up right now. Again, it's doing the same pickup, so it has all the information that it needs in this session. And then I'm going to tell it to start E1 right there, enter plan mode and run implementation phase E1 in a new work tree. And I'm letting it know that we're working on part D in another session. So now we have D1 working in one session, E1 working in another session. So we have Claude working in parallel in 2 parts of our implementation plan. Now, I'll take a break here. When it comes back and it needs some input from me, I'll come back and let you see what's happening. Okay, I do want to show you that while both sessions are working, if you look under .claude and under work trees, you can see where both work trees have been created. There's a work tree for D1 and a work tree for E1. These work with GitHub and with Claude to make sure that the code changes are kept separate so that we don't inadvertently write over each other. So this helps when you have parallel sessions to make sure that you are keeping your code changes clean. So I'll come back in just a few minutes as Claude continues working. Okay, welcome back. One of the great things about using the new agent view in Claude Code is that while you have multiple sessions running, you can see the state of each session. So for instance, I can see one session is working, and I can see a session that needs input from me. If a session was complete, it would be another one here that said completed. So I can watch this agent view screen, come back when it needs input, and click on it and say, okay, it's completed the plan and it's ready for me to say, yes, go ahead and continue the plan. So I can tell it to continue the plan, hit the back arrow to go back to agent view. And again, I can see now they're both running. So I'll come back in a few minutes with the next input and we'll continue working through this. Hey, welcome back. So I want to show you how you can use AI to do this parallel workflow, even if you don't really understand everything that's happening. So as I said earlier, I'm working on phase D1 and phase E1 in parallel sessions. You can see them here in Claude Code. You can see that one session is still running, the other session is complete. But I'm going to open a third session and I'm going to tell Claude, hey, I'm working on phases D1 and E1 in parallel sessions, each with their own work trees. So I'm letting Claude know what's going on. And then what are some options for merging this work into main once each session is complete? And I can say, check the implementation plan for details. Remember, since the implementation plan is referenced in the Claude.md, it knows where to find that information. So now I can go into the session and I can see what Claude is doing. So notice that Claude is coming up and giving me an idea of what's going on and then helping me understand how I need to merge these together safely and cleanly and securely. So this is the kind of work you can do really in the background while your work is being done so that you know that you can take this parallel work and get it into your main branch safely without having any corruption. So I'll come back again when the work is done. Okay, welcome back. So one of my other sessions needs input, so let's see what's happened. It looks like that everything is finished. It did defer some things to E3, but now we're ready to start merging this work, the D1 work and the E1 work, into main. And so we're going to do this one step at a time. We're going to start with D1, have that merged into main, and then we'll go to E1. We'll do it one at a time, and then we'll clean up our work tree. So phase D1 is complete. Please merge this. Into main via PR. And I can't spell, but that's okay. So I'll let Claude come do this work, and I'll come back in a few minutes when it's done. Okay, so I'm back. We've committed the changes to a PR, and I told it to merge that with main, and then some of the CI tests failed. So now it's going through and running the tests again. So this is what you do with each step when you make the code changes. It runs it against your integration test to make sure that everything is clean before it actually commits it. So I'm going to go through this again, and then we'll come back and let you know what I found. Okay, I'm back. Claude has some issues on part D1 with the WebSocket connection that I use to sync the work between different users for TaskFlow. But we got that worked out, and we got the D1 work tree merged with main. So now what we need to do is go into the session where we were working with phase E1 and let Claude know that D1 was just merged to main, and that this was on a separate branch. And what we need to do is rebase E1. So now it's going to get the code for main, rebase E1, and reconcile any issues that may have caused with the differences. Normally, if you have an implementation plan that's set up from the beginning to be parallel, this is a lot smoother. But since I started with a non-parallel sequential type implementation plan, it's a little bit more tricky, but I just wanted to show you how this would work with multiple sessions. I'll come back in a few minutes when this is done. Okay, so what's happened so far is that Claude has gone through and looked at the differences between the main with the D1 phase complete, and now from where it originally did E1, where it was just main. So it's rebased those, it's reconciled any differences, and now it is creating a PR and merging that PR into main. So then we will have both D1 and E1 in our main code base. So I'll come back when that's done. Okay, I'm back. So now we have E1 that has been, phase E1 that has been merged into main. Again, Claude Code found some issues running tests. That's why you include these automated tests, integrated tests, unit tests, all of these. So Claude found some issues, fixed those together, and then we merged that into main. So now we have both phase D1 and phase E1 committed to our main code branch. We ran those in parallel. So really, in just over the time that it took to do one of those phases, we completed both. Now, this has been something you could do with Claude Code and with other AI coding assistants for a long time. But with the addition of the agent view feature in Claude Code, it's much easier to watch what's happening and track what's happening with your multiple sessions. And if you want to use multiple sessions like this to implement, make sure that you build your plan in a way that it's set up for parallel, so it makes it a little bit easier. Now, all I'm going to do now is clean up the local work trees because I don't need those anymore. And then I'm going to make sure that the code and the documentation is still in sync. Remember, we want to keep those in sync all the way through so that when we get to the end, when our code is completely built, then we have documentation and code that's completely in sync and we don't have to go back and modify it later. Now, I'm going to go offline and finish parts D and parts E. There's no reason for you to sit here and watch me continually do this. It's just the same step over and over again. And hopefully I will see you again in the next episode. Thank you for joining us this time.